One small word has the power to protect your time, your energy, your confidence, and sometimes even your future. That word is no. Yet for millions of people, it's one of the hardest words to say. We say yes when we're exhausted, yes when we're busy, yes when we don't really want to, not because we enjoy it, but because we're afraid of disappointing others. So grab your coffee, sit back, relax, and listen carefully until the end, because today's episode might completely change the way you think about boundaries, confidence, and self-respect. You'll discover why saying no feels so difficult, what happens inside your brain when you constantly please others, and why learning to say no may be one of the most important life skills you'll ever develop. Let's begin with the people-pleasing trap. Why saying no feels so difficult. Before we start, can I ask you one question? A year from now, will your English be better than it is today? Or will you still be saying, "I'll start next week"? The truth is, most people don't fail because English is difficult. They fail because they never truly commit to it. That's why, for a limited time, I've reduced the price of the Native Flow English coaching experience to just $5. Not because it's worth only $5, but because I don't want money to be the reason you never start. For less than the price of a coffee, you can begin building a skill that can stay with you for the rest of your life. If you've been waiting for a sign, this is it. Click the link in the description. Join us today, and I'll see you inside. Now, let's begin today's lesson. Truth number 1. Why saying no feels almost impossible. Have you ever agreed to do something, even though every part of you wanted to say no? Maybe a friend asked for a favor, a coworker wanted your help, a family member made another request, or someone invited you somewhere you didn't want to go. You smiled, you said yes, and the moment they left, you regretted it. Honestly, almost everyone has experienced this. The strange part is that saying one simple word, no, can feel harder than doing something we don't even want to do. But why? Why is such a small word so difficult to say? The answer begins inside your brain. Human beings are naturally social. For thousands of years, surviving meant belonging to a group. Being accepted meant protection. Being rejected could mean danger. Even though our world has changed, our brains still carry many of those ancient instincts. That's why rejection feels painful. In fact, psychologists have discovered that social rejection activates some of the same areas of the brain that respond to physical pain. Think about that for a moment. Your brain doesn't simply dislike rejection. It treats it as a real threat. Now imagine someone asks you for a favor. Before you've even answered, your brain starts asking silent questions. What if they get upset? What if they think I'm selfish? What if they stop liking me? Most of these things never happen, but your brain doesn't know that. It wants to protect your relationships. So instead of risking conflict, it chooses the safer option. It says yes, even when saying yes hurts you. Now, here's something fascinating. Many people believe they're being kind when they constantly say yes, but sometimes they're simply trying to avoid discomfort. There's a difference. Kindness comes from generosity. People-pleasing often comes from fear of disappointing someone, fear of being judged, fear of not being enough. And honestly, those fears quietly control millions of people every single day. Now let's imagine two different people. The first person agrees to everything: extra work, last-minute favors, weekend plans, phone calls late at night. Little by little, their schedule becomes full. Their energy disappears. They become stressed, frustrated, even resentful. But because everyone sees them as the nice person, they continue saying yes. The second person is also kind, also generous, but they understand something important. Every time they say yes to something, they're automatically saying no to something else. If they say yes to unnecessary work, they're saying no to rest. If they say yes to everyone's requests, they're saying no to their own priorities. If they say yes to things they don't value, they're saying no to the life they actually want. That's a powerful idea. Because time is limited, energy is limited, attention is limited. You cannot give them away endlessly. Now, here's one of the biggest myths about saying no. People think saying no is selfish. But honestly, healthy boundaries aren't selfish. They're necessary. Imagine your phone battery. If you never recharge it, eventually it dies. The human mind works the same way. If you constantly give your time, your attention, your energy, without ever protecting them, eventually you'll feel exhausted. Not because you're weak, because you're human. Now think about the people you admire most. Successful entrepreneurs, great leaders, respected teachers. Do you think they say yes to everything? Of course not. In fact, many of them protect their time more carefully than anything else. They understand that every yes has a cost. And that's why they choose carefully. Now here's something that might surprise you. Most people actually respect someone who says no politely. Why? Because confidence is attractive. Someone who respectfully protects their time shows that they value themselves, and people often value those who value themselves. Ironically, the people who are afraid that saying no will make others dislike them often discover the opposite. Others begin respecting them more, not because they became rude, but because they became honest. Now, before we move to the next truth, I want you to remember one simple sentence. Every unnecessary yes quietly steals time from something that truly matters. The question isn't whether you should help people. Of course you should. The real question is this: are you saying yes because you genuinely want to, or because you're afraid to say no? That one question can completely change the way you make decisions. And honestly, the next truth is where everything begins to change, because we'll discover why saying no doesn't push people away. It often creates healthier and stronger relationships. Truth number 2, why saying no makes people respect you more. Let's be honest. One of the biggest fears people have is this: if I say no, people won't like me anymore. It's an understandable fear. After all, everyone wants to be liked. Everyone wants to be accepted. But here's something that psychology has discovered. Being liked and being respected are not always the same thing. And if you constantly sacrifice your own needs just to be liked, you often lose both. Now imagine two coworkers. The first one says yes to everything. Can you stay late? Yes. Can you finish my report? Yes. Can you cover my shift? Yes. At first, everyone appreciates them, but after a while, something unexpected happens. People stop asking politely. They start expecting it. The favors become responsibilities. The kindness becomes an obligation. And suddenly, Saying yes is no longer appreciated. It's simply assumed. Now imagine another coworker. They're friendly, helpful, respectful, but when they're genuinely too busy, they simply say, "I'd really like to help, but I can't today." No excuses, no guilt, no long explanation, just honesty. Surprisingly, most people accept it. Why? Because clear boundaries create clear expectations. People know where they stand. And honestly, clarity builds respect. Now, here's something fascinating. Psychologists have found that people often trust those who are consistent, not those who try to please everyone. Think about it. If someone agrees with everything you say, never disagrees, and never refuses a request, after a while, it begins to feel less genuine. You start wondering, do they really mean it? Or are they just trying to make everyone happy? Real honesty creates trust, and trust creates respect. Now let's talk about boundaries. Imagine your house has no doors. Anyone could walk in at any time, take whatever they wanted, interrupt your day whenever they felt like it. That would feel ridiculous. Yet many people live that way emotionally. They have no boundaries. Anyone can demand their time. Anyone can interrupt their plans. Anyone can decide how they'll spend their day. And honestly, that's exhausting. Boundaries are simply doors. They don't keep good people out. They simply help you decide when to open them. Now, here's another interesting truth. Confident people rarely apologize for having healthy boundaries. Notice the difference between these two responses. "I'm so sorry. I feel terrible. Maybe I don't know. And thank you for thinking of me, but I won't be able to." The second response isn't rude. It's calm, respectful, and confident. Confidence doesn't need 20 excuses. Now imagine someone who constantly changes their plans just to avoid disappointing others. Eventually, they disappoint themselves. They stop exercising, stop reading, stop resting, stop spending time with their family, all because they keep saying yes to everyone else. Here's the irony. The person they neglect the most is themselves. And honestly, you cannot pour from an empty cup. If you're emotionally exhausted, physically tired, and mentally overwhelmed, you're no longer helping people from a place of generosity. You're helping from a place of obligation. There's a huge difference. Now let's think about leaders. The best leaders in the world don't say yes to every idea. If they did, their companies would have no direction. Their teams would become confused. Their goals would disappear. Great leaders say no all the time, not because they're negative, but because they know what truly deserves a yes. Every meaningful success requires choosing what matters, and choosing what doesn't. Now, here's one of my favorite ideas. Every time you say no to something unimportant, you're protecting something important. Maybe your health, maybe your family, maybe your dream, maybe your peace of mind. A simple no is often really saying yes to the life you're trying to build. Think about that. The word no isn't always rejection. Sometimes it's protection. Now, before we finish this truth, I want you to remember something powerful. People may admire someone who says yes to everything for a short time, but they usually respect the person who knows exactly when to say yes and exactly when to say no. Because confidence isn't about pleasing everyone. Confidence is about staying true to your values, even when it's uncomfortable. And honestly, the next truth might be the most surprising of all. Because saying no doesn't only change your relationships with other people, it completely changes the relationship you have with yourself. Truth number 3, how saying no builds confidence and self-respect. Here's something that sounds almost too simple to be true. Every time you say no to something that goes against your values, you become a little more confident, not overnight, not instantly, but little by little. Your confidence begins to grow. Why? Because confidence isn't built by what you say to other people. It's built by the promises you keep to yourself. Think about that. Imagine you promise yourself you'll go to the gym after work. Then someone asks you to do something unnecessary. You immediately say yes. You skip the gym. Now, nothing terrible happened, but your brain noticed something. It noticed that someone else's priorities became more important than your own. Now imagine the opposite. Someone makes the same request. You smile and politely say, "I'd love to help another time, but I already have plans." Then you go to the gym. You keep your promise. You respected your own commitment. That might seem like a small moment, but your brain learns something powerful. I can trust myself. And honestly, that's where real confidence begins. Now let's talk about self-respect. Many people spend years trying to earn respect from others. They work harder, say yes more often, try to make everyone happy. But they forget one important thing. The first person's respect you should earn is your own. Because if you don't respect your own time, your own energy, your own dreams, why would anyone else? Now, here's something fascinating. Psychologists often describe confidence as evidence, not positive thinking, evidence. Every time you do something difficult, your brain collects proof. Proof that you're capable. Proof that you can handle uncomfortable situations. Proof that you can protect your boundaries. And every polite no becomes another piece of evidence. At first, your voice might shake. You may feel guilty. You might spend hours wondering if you made the right decision. That's normal. Every new skill feels uncomfortable in the beginning. Think about driving a car. The first time, every movement feels difficult. You're thinking about the mirrors, the pedals, the traffic, everything at once. A year later, you drive almost automatically. Saying no works in a very similar way. The first few times, it feels uncomfortable, but with practice, it becomes natural. Now imagine someone who has spent 10 years saying yes to almost everything. Then one day, they finally decide to set a boundary. Sometimes people around them become surprised, maybe even disappointed, not because the boundary is wrong, but because they're not used to hearing it. And honestly, that's okay. When you change, people need time to adjust. Don't mistake someone else's surprise for proof that you're doing something wrong. Sometimes, it's simply proof that you're growing. Now, here's another important lesson. You are not responsible for managing everyone's emotions. Read that again. You are not responsible for making sure every person is happy with every decision you make. Of course, you should be kind, respectful, honest. But after that, their reaction belongs to them, not to you. Many people spend their entire lives carrying emotional responsibilities that were never theirs to carry, and it's exhausting. Now let's think about successful people. Whether they're entrepreneurs, athletes, writers, or musicians, they all have one thing in common. They protect their focus because they understand something most people forget. Every distraction has a cost. Every unnecessary commitment steals attention from something meaningful. Imagine trying to read a book while 20 people keep interrupting you every 2 minutes. Eventually, you stop making progress. Life works the same way. Without boundaries, your biggest goals slowly disappear beneath small requests that never really mattered. Now, here's one of my favorite questions. Before saying yes, ask yourself, if nobody would be disappointed by my answer, what would I choose? That's a powerful question because it removes guilt, it removes pressure, and it often reveals what you genuinely want. Now, before we finish this truth, remember this. Every time you protect your peace, your time, or your values, you're teaching yourself that your life matters too. That's not selfish. That's self-respect. And self-respect becomes confidence. Confidence becomes courage. And courage changes lives. But here's the interesting part. There's still one obstacle that stops most people from saying no. It's not fear, it's guilt. And in the next truth, we'll discover why guilt appears and how to stop letting it control your decisions. Truth number 4, why you feel guilty after saying no. Have you noticed something strange? Sometimes saying no only takes 1 second, but feeling guilty about it can last for hours or even days. You replay the conversation in your mind. Maybe I was too harsh. Maybe I should have helped. What if they're upset with me? Sound familiar? Honestly, this happens to almost everyone, especially to people who genuinely care about others. But here's what psychology tells us. Guilt is not always a sign that you've done something wrong. Sometimes, it's simply a sign that you've done something different. Think about that. If you've spent years saying yes to everyone, your brain begins to believe that's what a good person does. So the first time you say no, your brain sounds an alarm, not because you've made a mistake, but because you've broken an old habit. And habits don't disappear quietly. Now imagine someone who has always answered every phone call immediately. Then one day, they decide to turn off their phone during dinner so they can spend time with their family. At first, they feel uncomfortable, almost guilty. But have they done anything wrong? Not at all. They've simply changed a habit. The same thing happens when you begin setting boundaries. Your emotions need time to catch up with your new decisions. Now here's something fascinating. Many people confuse guilt with responsibility. They're not the same thing. Responsibility means doing what's fair and reasonable. Guilt often convinces you that you're responsible for everyone's happiness, but you're not. Imagine a friend invites you to an event. You're exhausted. You've had a difficult week. You truly need rest. You politely decline. Your friend feels disappointed. Does their disappointment automatically mean you made the wrong decision? Of course not. Someone else's emotion is not always proof of your mistake. That's one of the hardest lessons to learn. Now let's talk about expectations, because expectations quietly shape our lives. If people become used to you saying yes every single time, the first no might surprise them. Not because you're being rude, but because you've changed the pattern. Think of it this way. Imagine a store that's open 24 hours a day. One evening, it closes at 9. Customers may be surprised. Some might even complain. But that doesn't mean the store is wrong for closing. It simply means people became accustomed to unlimited access. Many people treat themselves the same way. They're available all the time. For everyone, every request, every problem, every emergency. Then one day, they decide to protect their time. And suddenly, they feel guilty. Not because they've become selfish, but because they're no longer endlessly available. Now, here's another important truth. Kind people often carry guilt that doesn't belong to them. They apologize for resting, apologize for being busy, apologize for protecting their mental health, apologize for needing time alone. But honestly, you don't need permission to take care of yourself. Rest is not laziness. Boundaries are not cruelty. And saying no is not rejection. Sometimes it's an act of wisdom. Now imagine two people. The first says yes to everything until they're completely exhausted. Eventually, they become stressed, impatient, emotionally drained. The second protects their energy. They rest when necessary, say no when appropriate. And because of that, when they do say yes, they're fully present. Which person is actually helping others more? Usually the second. Because genuine kindness comes from abundance, not exhaustion. Now here's a question that can completely change the way you think. When you say yes to everyone else, who is saying yes to you? Think about that. If you're constantly sacrificing your own needs, your own dreams, and your own peace, who's protecting them? The answer is simple. Only you can. No one else can set your boundaries for you. No one else can protect your time for you. No one else can decide what truly matters in your life. That's your responsibility. Now, before we finish this truth, I want you to remember one sentence. Feeling guilty doesn't always mean you're doing something wrong. Sometimes, it simply means you're finally putting yourself on your own list of priorities. And honestly, that's one of the healthiest decisions you'll ever make. Because in the final truth, we're going to discover the greatest reward of learning to say no. It's not having fewer responsibilities. It's gaining something far more valuable, freedom. Truth number 5, the freedom that begins with one simple word. Let's finish with a question. Imagine waking up tomorrow and knowing that every yes you say is something you genuinely mean. Not because you feel guilty, not because you're afraid, not because you don't want to disappoint someone, but because you truly want to say yes. How different would your life feel? Honestly, probably very different, because the real power of saying no isn't about refusing people. It's about choosing your life. Think about that for a moment. Every single day, life offers you choices. Some are obvious. Others are hidden behind simple questions. Can you do this for me? Do you have time? Can you come with us? Each time you answer, you're shaping your future. Most people believe their lives are changed by big decisions. Choosing a career, getting married, moving to another country. And yes, those decisions matter. But honestly, your life is also shaped by hundreds of small decisions that nobody notices. The meeting you didn't need to attend, the argument you chose not to join, the invitation you politely declined, the extra work you refused because your family needed you, the evening you protected so you could rest. One small no, one better life. Now here's something fascinating. Successful people often don't have more time than everyone else. They simply protect it better. Think about someone like a successful entrepreneur, an athlete, a writer, or a musician. Do you think they accept every invitation, every meeting, every opportunity? Of course not. If they did, they'd never have time to do the work that actually matters. Their success isn't only built by what they choose to do, it's also built by what they choose not to do. That's a lesson most people discover far too late. Now imagine your life as a garden. Every commitment is a seed. If you plant too many, none of them receive enough water. None of them grow properly. But if you carefully choose what deserves your attention, the important things begin to flourish. Your health, your relationships, your dreams, your peace of mind. That's exactly what boundaries do. They don't make your life smaller. They make it more meaningful. Now let's talk about freedom. Many people think freedom means doing whatever you want. Psychologists often describe it differently. Freedom is having the ability to make choices that match your values, not your fears, not other people's expectations, your values. Imagine two people. One says yes to everything because they're afraid of rejection. The other says yes only to what truly matters. Who is actually freer? The second person. Because they're making decisions instead of reactions. And honestly, that's one of the greatest forms of freedom anyone can experience. Now, here's a question I'd like you to remember after this episode ends. The next time someone asks you for something, before answering, pause for just a moment. Then quietly ask yourself, if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to? Maybe you're saying no to your family, your health, your studies, your sleep, your biggest dream. That single question has the power to completely change your decisions. Because every yes has a hidden cost. And every thoughtful no has a hidden reward. Now here's the beautiful part. Learning to say no doesn't make you less kind. It makes your kindness more genuine. When you finally say yes, people know you truly mean it. You're not helping because you feel trapped. You're helping because you've chosen to. And that's a completely different kind of generosity. It's honest, it's healthy, and it's sustainable. Now, before we finish this episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. Your time is limited. Your energy is limited. Your attention is limited. They're some of the most valuable things you'll ever own. Spend them wisely. Protect them carefully. And don't be afraid to say no to anything that pulls you away from the person you're trying to become. Because every confident life, every peaceful life, and every meaningful life is built one decision at a time. Sometimes that decision is saying yes, but surprisingly often, it's having the courage to say one simple word, no. Thank you so much for listening. And remember, every time you say no to what doesn't matter, you're saying yes to the life that truly does.